Hello, how did you enjoy the keynote? And we had a little break, and now here you are finding yourself in this session. Thank you so much for joining me right here in this fantastic room, which is probably your home office, hopefully. Maybe you're just on the couch. I mean, that's the good stuff about all these virtual conferences, right? You can do it from the comfort of your own home, so that's amazing. I hope you will stick with me for the next 30-40 minutes. We're going to talk about Codespaces, and you know what? Let's just get started. So I'm going to flip this over to my screen right here. And so with Codespaces, if you're not familiar with it, I'm going to talk about it in length, so you'll learn all about it. But you can start developing from your iPad, from your browser, which is essentially the same thing because your iPad, basically, you're going to use your browser. You can do it from VS Code. You can do it from anywhere and everywhere. So first, a little bit quickly about me, mostly because I just want to give you my contact information in case you will have questions afterwards, or you have suggestions, or you just want to say hi, whatever. My name is Gerald Versluis. I am a software engineer at Microsoft, and I actually work on Codespaces, so that's pretty cool. If you have anything, just reach out to me. You can find me on Twitter if you're interested in my daily live, and I have been working on Xamarin Forms as well, so you'll probably find a lot of Xamarin stuff on my Twitter along with all kinds of other stuff. And there's my email address if you want to reach out that way. So let's quickly move on. So here's a little thought experiment. Like whenever you start a new job, or maybe you're a manager and you're watching this and you bring on some new person on the team. So how quickly can that person get to coding? That usually takes like a long time, right? So you have to get your machine ready. You have to be able to have your account ready and log in, because that's always an issue, right? Sorry, that's not something that Codespaces will fix for you. The machine has to be ready. You have to be able to log in. But from there, Codespaces can help you fix this problem. Because you will get to coding like in under 30 seconds, maybe a minute, at most a couple of minutes. So normally you would have to like install the tool. So you would have to like install Visual Studio. You would have to get all the right SDKs. You will have to set that environment variable. You have to work through all kinds of things. You have to download all the things. So maybe you're limited to bandwidth. And this is even more like in the situation that we are today, right? With the whole COVID situation, where you might be working from home, where your bandwidth might be a little bit more limited than what you're used to at the office. So it might even be slower, and you're doing hours and hours and maybe multiple days before you can set up your dev environment. So that is preferably something we do not want to do, right? We just want to make that good impression whenever you're starting a new job and get to coding. So this is just one scenario. We're going to talk through some other scenarios as well, probably, while we're talking about the Codespaces, and you can hopefully come up with some other scenarios as well. Maybe you can even, I've seen talks about a scenario where you, even before that person is hired, so you can use Codespaces with the interview process. So instead of just doing the whiteboard things that get a lot of critique, you can now just spin up a Codespace, and you will have like the interviewer role and the person being interviewed, and you can write some actual code and see if it compiles. So that's pretty awesome, right? So we'll talk about some other stuff as well. And that's exactly what we want to solve with Codespaces. Like I said, no more readmes. So if you're working on an open source software project, maybe you have to go through the readme, the contributing docs. No more of that. You just click 2 clicks and you're in the code. You can work away on that open source project. So first, let's take a little step back and establish like what is a dev environment. So if you think of a dev environment, there's like this multiple cogs working together, right? So you have the editor, which you use to write all the code. Then you have the source, which is the actual code. Then you have the different runtimes. So if we narrow that down to like the .NET space, then you have the .NET Core versions, maybe the .NET Framework. You throw the debugger in there so you can see what's going on whenever you run it. You have the packaging packages, the NuGet packages, the NPM packages, some tooling around that. Maybe you have some extensions installed that will help you write that better code or keep in check whatever you're doing. You have the terminal to I don't know, look like a hacker. So to do all the command line stuff. Oh, there's the extension, so tools extensions. But you know, all this stuff is abstracted away basically by Codespaces, because Codespaces is an IDE that's running in the cloud, and whenever you're using cloud services, a bunch of stuff is abstracted away for you. All the heavy lifting is done in the cloud, and you can just focus on what is important, and in this case that is the project and of course you. We just want you to be happy. We want you to be cool. We want you to do the best stuff in your work that you can do, and not worry about all the rest of the things. So if we relate that to Codespaces, I already mentioned it's a completely managed environment. So everything is managed for you. It will be updated. It's just a container in case of Linux, and there is Windows Codespaces coming as well, which are just VMs and still some kind of a container. But they are managed for you. So you don't have to worry about starting it up, spinning it up, taking it apart, upgrading your RAM, doing whatever. You don't need to do that anymore. You can just do that in the cloud and do not worry about it. And the beautiful thing is you can feel right at home, because you can still personalize it as it were running on your own machine. So there's a couple of ways to do that, because it all runs on VS Code. There is the settings and the theme and the extension sync. So that will just synchronize between all of your VS Code instances, whether that's local or in the browser. And you can also do something that's called dot files, or you can modify the dev container. We'll also see that in a little bit, but that will make that you feel right at home whenever you just boom start that dev environment. So you can develop from anywhere, because like I said, all you need basically is a browser. All the heavy lifting is done in the cloud. So all you need is a browser. You get the full Visual Studio Code experience that runs inside a browser now. And you can just edit files, have all the IntelliSense, do all the things. So, you know, whenever you're maybe on that well-earned vacation, but, you know, stuff happens in production, and the last resort is you, while you're in a tent on a mountain, just your iPad and just barely that cellular data connection that you still have. They call you, you pop out your iPad and you just start coding. That's how awesome it is. Collaboration all around. Collaboration is right inside of all this, because it's tightly coupled to LiveShare, which you might already know. LiveShare is the solution where you can just, you know, start a session with a bunch of people, and you can see multiple cursors going on. People start typing updates in real time, debug it, chat with everyone. You can just use LiveShare together with Codespaces, so you can work from anywhere and collaborate with anyone. That's really cool. So all the info, and also the way to sign up, because at the time of recording, Ignite is going on right now. So I'm missing out just for you to do this session, but all the info and at the time of recording, this is all in preview, at least bits of it. So if you want to join that, go to this link. Not right now, do it at the end of this session. This link will be in the slides a couple of times over, but you can go to this link, sign up, and there's also more information on like how to use this, some questions you might have, some information about the pricing, because during the preview it's all free, but you can imagine that you know, it's in the cloud, so there's some compute, there is some storage involved, so there is some cost involved, but that's probably a fraction of whatever you're spending on machines and dev, lost time setting dev environments up right now. I'm not going to talk about pricing in detail, just find it yourself, and there's probably going to be some changes whenever this goes to general availability, but you know, just to put it out there. So let's just have a look. Actually, I'm just going to close these slides. And this is actually the website that I was just talking about. I'm not going to read this all to you. I think that you can all do that yourself. But what I want to do is quickly scroll down. So here you can see all the tools. You can do the browsers. You can do Visual Studio Code, Visual Studio 2019. I'm going to show you that here. And well, simplify workflow. Okay, very nice, very cool. sign up for the beta. So that's something that you probably want to do whenever you get out of this session. And here we have some FAQ kind of things. So can I leave it open, available for all repositories, yada, yada, yada. So let's just dive in here. On my account, I have this very simple, I have it forked from Martin Woodward, who is working at GitHub actually. So this must be good, right? So I have this project. It's a super simple project, just ASP.NET Core, and it does some nifty ASCII art things. We're going to see that in a little bit. So the way you imagine that this is just a open source software project that you come across. Like I was surprised actually. I was wanting to update something in the Microsoft docs, so the documentation pages from Microsoft, and I had this ability to just do the Codespaces way. So I tried it actually with that as one of the first, and I opened it, and it was really cool because I found that they had put in some extensions that were automatically installed whenever you work on the docs, which come in very handy because it gives you some kind of formatting and layout and hints how to write certain things. So that was really, really cool. So let's see how they set that up. So imagine that this is an open source project that you're finding out about. You want to get started, but normally, typically, you would have to set up all kinds of dependencies. Maybe in the process, you break some things that you need for your day job, which is all far from ideal. So we just have this typical repository. It can also be a private repository because it's integrated with all your credentials in GitHub. So that all works. And here you have this code button right here at the top. So you probably have that already. And if you click it open, then there's the info on how to clone this Git repository with your favorite Git client. You can open with the GitHub desktop client, Visual Studio, download as a zip. But if you get into the Codespaces preview, then you will also have this button and see like open with Codespaces. So if I click that, it will tell me right now that there are no active Codespaces. So I can just click a new one, and it's going to open. You can see, boom, this is already like a window that represents kind of the VS Code layout. So it will just clone that repository in this VS Code kind of instance in the browser. I'm going to zoom this in a little bit, and you can see the extension GitHub browser wants to access the GitHub account. That's my username. So allow, so all my credentials are being set up. Boom, there we have the editor. Now for some reason, I think that is something has to do with the preview bits that I'm on right now. It has to reload this VS Code instance once more to load all my extensions and stuff. So let's wait a little bit for that to happen. Okay, so here we go. The reload is going on. Sorry for that. That shouldn't happen in your experience. And again, I'm not quite sure why this is happening. And here we go. So this is like the experience that you should get automatically. So it starts installing like the things that are suitable for this project. So it starts installing the C# dependencies for Linux, because this is a Linux Codespace, Omni Sharp, some other things, Razor language service, because it sees it's ASP.NET. So that's all great. Let me just close this for a little bit. And it also opens the README file. So I think one of the objectives basically of Codespaces is eliminate the need for that README file. I mean, the README file is not going anywhere, but the README file is basically just this big wall of text normally where you go like, okay, do this to set up the environment. Well, it has some piece to set up your environment, do this, do that, install this specific version, else it won't work. We don't need that anymore because we just did click, and within, what was it, 30 seconds, under a minute, we have this repository cloned. It's right here in this Visual Studio Code instance in the browser, and I can start coding. So actually, let me make a change right now. So yeah, let me make that change first. So here we have any questions. I see this is still Martin Woodward. So let's make that to into my own username, so we don't bother Martin for all the stuff that I'm creating here. I don't have the CI set up, but I'll leave this now anyway. save that. That's done. You can immediately see here in the Git pane of things that it has a change. And also, like I mentioned earlier, the terminal. So, okay, is that part of it as well? Well, let's see. I can just go here into the menu, terminal, new terminal, and boom, here we have this terminal coming up, which is just a bash terminal. And this is all running inside of a container. So I can just see, like, here's the file system. I can do .NET and see which version is installed. Here we go, .NET version 3.1, perfect. So, you have all this, the terminal things set up for you. Whenever you work with dot files, you can personalize your terminal. I will get into that a little bit. You can also just, it all works on Git, so Git has to be installed, Git status. Well, you can see I modified the README file, so that's great too. So this is, boom, that's just there. You can just use that, the terminal. Of course, if you're on Windows, this will be like either just a regular command or probably PowerShell, so you can do that as well. Okay, for now, let's put that away. So let's just actually, just run this. Let's see what this project is about. So I go to this debug pane right here in Visual Studio Code, and I can just simply click the play button here, basically. So I think I can also press F5. I think in some instances of browsers, F5 is still like the reload. So I'm not sure how that will behave on Windows. If you press F5, it might just reload the whole window. So be careful with that. I think they're looking into how they should do that as well, how they can handle that better. But, the play button works just as well. You can see while I was talking, it's just boom, 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 loading all the things, building all the stuff. And I think it's running right now. So, and the interesting thing is like, okay, just remember that this is all running in the cloud. So the heavy lifting happens there. So this localhost link here, that's nice, but localhost 5000, there's nothing running on my machine. So that's a problem, right? So if I would go to this local host thing, then nothing probably happens. See, here we go. Nothing's there. But whenever we actually click this link, so I hold down Command and I click. So I think on Windows it's Control click. But it takes me to this special magic URL here. And let me zoom this in for you a little bit. And it actually shows me like the running project. So how does that work? That works with something that's called port forwarding. So I'm just going to go into this project in a little bit, but let's go back to Visual Studio Code. And this says it's like running on 5000. So here in the other panes, you can see that there's also this icon, the little monitor with well, probably the Codespaces icon. So if we go into that, we can see, well, a bunch of things that are associated with Codespaces. You can see another Codespace that I have running. Which is actually a GitHub action that I've edited before as well. So that's pretty cool. You can see the details of this session. I can disconnect. Okay, that's fine. And down here, you can see the forwarded ports. So you can see that 2 of them are set up now. The top one is probably like the regular IPv4, and the bottom one seems like a IPv6. So and port 5000 is forwarded, and then by some magic, whenever you go to that local host thing, it will automatically pipe that through to your system, and you can just see it running here as if it was running on your local system. This is actually authenticated, so if I copy this and go into a new private window, you will see that it's asked for my authentication first, so not everyone can just access it then. It's just only for you, but you can still run this as if it was like running on your own local host. You can also set up like ports for yourself. You can do that from right here. You can do the little plus and add forwarded ports here, or you can add that to the personalization with your container. We will touch on that in a little bit. But first, let's focus on this project. So this does some cool ASCII art stuff. The GitHub Octocat here says something to the .NET bot. It says hello world. I think if we reload, does it do something else? No. Okay, so what I can do is here add a query parameter with a message and say, hello, nice people watching. And if I do that, then it says, hello, nice people watching. So that's very cool. So this just works, very simple project, nothing fancy. If I now go back here and I go to my files, and you know, maybe I want to put in a breakpoint and see how all of this stuff works. So I go to the index ch.html. You can see all the colors are lighting up here. I can just go in here. I can type message. I can type a dot, and you can see the IntelliSense is coming up. Nothing special. Everything like you would expect it to work. I can go in here. You can see the tooltips. You can see all the documentation. So everything just works as you would expect it to work on your desktop, right? So what I can also do is now put in a breakpoint here. So check if our message is null or empty. So then whenever I do this and I just reload this, now this all runs in the browser, so it's probably not going to take me to that other tab because that's going to be a limitation of the browser. But you can see this little emoji icon coming up here, which indicates that it's hitting a breakpoint. So let's go over here, and we can see indeed that this is now waiting on our input, and I can just hover over here over the message, and the message is hello, nice people watching. I can dive into non-public members, do all the things here, just as you would debug this locally. You can step through it, step over it, do whatever, and just continue running. So that is pretty cool, right? So the debugging experience is just there. You can just get the full Visual Studio Code experience right here. Now let's see. And one other thing, if we go into like the CSS, so we want to, I don't know, change something and just don't want to stop running all the things. So let's just make the background red. Just to see it works, and we go here, it reloads, boom, nothing fancy, just works, no restarting of things, just as you would run this locally. Did I already mention how awesome this was? Okay, very cool. So okay, let's change this back because the red is horrible. There we go, reload it. So I made this change to my README. Let's actually just stop this debugging session, get that out of here, and do that in Git. So updated README, here we go. Whoops, no enter. I think I need to stage this. That's open file stage, there we go, and update README and commit that, push that, do all the things. And when we now go over back to my repository and I reload that, it should have done that. Didn't it push yet? Oh, it's still doing it. Did it do it now? No, still nothing. Well, then I just go into my terminal and go into this terminal, git push. There we go, no extra credentials needed. I can just push this because it got the credentials from my GitHub account, so it just does that. Push to my main branch, 35 seconds go, here we go. So no problem at all. Update README, now any questions will come to me. Awesome. While we're here anyway, so let's check out this dev container thing. That is one of the ways that you can personalize this experience. So if we look into there, I think the dev container is not specifically a Codespaces concept. I think it's a concept that works in Visual Studio Code or maybe Visual Studio as a whole. I'm not entirely sure. But anyway, let's just stay with the Codespaces. So you create this folder .dev container, and it has a dev container JSON file, which is basically a definition of well, how you want to set up this Codespace. So you can give it a name, you can specify some things how to build this dev container. So you can specify your own Docker file, so you can just point it to a Docker file with all the prerequisites that you have in there. It will pull that down, create the container with that Docker file, and you will have all the stuff that you need. You probably need some username and some stuff for that Docker container building. I'm not too familiar with Docker, but that probably has to do with this. Now this extensions section has to do all with the extensions in Visual Studio Code. So you can just say, okay, I want to have these extensions installed. So imagine again that this is a open source project repository, the Microsoft Docs one, and they say, okay, I think this extension will come in really helpful with people wanting to contribute to this. They just put it in here. That will be added to the extensions that you already have installed yourself. So that will be synchronized in there, and with these extensions will be installed on top of that, and you can make use of that. So remote user Docker file, not entirely sure why that's needed again here. So here's the forward port. So this has the 5000 and 5001 automatically. You can add this, you can do 8080, you can do just 80, you can do whatever in here, so that whenever you have a service running on a different port, you can just reach it with this. Here, these settings, I think those are specific to Visual Studio Code. So you can say, okay, my default terminal is bash. I want to exclude some files here. So that's all stuff that you can do as well. So if we go a little bit back, you can here inspect that same Docker file. So we've locked that to .NET Core 3.1. That's the one that we saw earlier, and do some other things. It does some, runs some bash script to set up some other dependencies, installs Node. So that's pretty cool as well. Installs Azure CLI, so that should be in there. So you can totally personalize this Codespace. You can make this like a template one, hand this out to all your employees. They will be able to spin this up and have the exact same environment over and over and over again. So if we go back one more, you can also do some VS Code personalization this way. And the other thing that I didn't really touch on is the dot file. So that's something more like the dev container is like the personalization of the whole container. The dot files is like your own personal personalization. So I have this dot files test repository, which is my test thing. But if you set up a repository which is just called dot files, so the dot files refer to these files that start with a dot, which is actually more of a Linux concept. And those files are used to like configure the looks of your terminal, or maybe you have some alias command set up. So you have an alias set up to say like, I'm going to go home, and then it will do the git push automatically. I don't know, maybe you have some alias set up that way. You can all do that with the dot files, and whenever you have a repository that's just called dot files, that repository will be pulled into your Codespace as well. And all the things in there will be set up for you, so you will have all the personalizations that are running on your local machine as well as on your Codespace and everywhere else. This also works for like the npm package sources, maybe your NuGet package sources, you can also hook up here. So for Windows, you want to do this with like batch files and PowerShell files. For Linux, you can just use bash files or whatever. So that's pretty cool. Now, the other thing, I've done this in the browser, but let's just switch over to Visual Studio Code. Let me just quickly start that up here on the desktop. So this is just my desktop Visual Studio Code, and I have that same, well, actually all the same panes right here. So this looks like almost identical. And I also have this Remote Explorer here, so my Codespaces. And you can see it already sees like my Codespaces that I've got set up in GitHub as well. By the different icons, you can see this one is suspended, this one is connected, and I can just boom, click this one, and it will connect me in the same way as in the browser, and I will just see the exact same thing, but now from a desktop. So maybe you're not on vacation with that iPad, but maybe you have like this Chromebook or some light laptop that doesn't have like all the power of your beast of a machine that's in the office, like with gazillion RAM gigabytes and all the cores and all the things. You just have that light laptop. You can just open up VS Code, which is pretty lightweight, and you can get that thing here. So it will be no surprise that whenever I click run, it will just run here as well, and you will see all the same things that we've just seen from the browser. So one thing that we have here, like here at the very bottom, we can turn on the settings sync. So that's something that is incorporated as well, which allows you again to personalize some things, and you don't even need the dot files or some other files. It will take the settings, it will take your themes, and it will sync that all across your different VS Code instances. So, you can just have that same look and feel everywhere. It will log into your account automatically, and that is how you can do that. So That's pretty cool. So actually the last thing I want to show you is, again, the same thing basically. So let me just close this one and magically switch over to Windows. Oops, let me log in really quickly. And here I have Visual Studio 2019. So full-blown Visual Studio 2019 runs on my desktop, takes a little bit more RAM and CPU and that kind of stuff. But whenever you get into like the Codespace preview, you will get a new button here in this Get to Code screen. So you can see the Connect to a Codespace button. It has the little GitHub icon. And whenever we click that, I'm not going to see the Codespaces that I've created earlier because those are Linux based and I'm not going to be able to connect to them yet. Who knows what happens? Don't quote me on this one. I genuinely don't have any knowledge about this, but who knows what might happen. I mean, we have Linux apps now running on Windows, so that's crazy if you think about it. So who knows what happened. And here I can create, as you can see, instant types of windows. So this will just spin up VMs with like 4 cores, 8 gigabytes of RAM, 8 cores, 16 gigabytes of RAM. And that will probably be expanded in the future with maybe GPU for AI kind of things, or I don't know what it will be. But if I just go back here, well, let's take the other repository actually. So the same one again, just paste that in here. Suspend, so you only want to be billed for the stuff that you use, so you can suspend after 5 minutes, 30 minutes, up to 2 hours if you're not using it, so it will shut down automatically. I can just create and connect. So Visual Studio 2019 is a little bit bigger than Visual Studio Code, so this will take a little bit more time, but you will see that it's still a lot less than what you're used to from like the full-blown Visual Studio Code. So actually here it is, it's already loading, pulling down my Git repository, connecting to Visual Studio Codespace, and I should be able to talk long enough to see it show up. So, you know, and if I can talk long enough, I can easily fill 1 minute. Hopefully, because it's taking a bit long now. But what we will see show up is like the exact same experience, again, as if you would open a normal project or a normal solution on Visual Studio 2019. But again, all the heavy lifting is done in the cloud. You will just see basically your Visual Studio is now just like a thin client that will just let you edit the files, and all the other stuff will happen on Azure, of course. So here we are, it's still loading a little bit. Maybe my machine was sleeping a bit and needs to be woken up. Come on. Oh, actually it's just a cursor that's hanging. And you can see all my files are here again. I can just double click this CS proj. It will open that project, and I can just run it here as we've seen, like on the other side from the browser, from Visual Studio Code. And again, nothing special here, but now it's just running on a Windows VM. So, you know, you have some different stuff to use there. So here we are, loaded the project. So yeah, no surprise again, there's just that. And whenever we pop open the terminal here, you can already see it's developer PowerShell. But again, you're just running on a VM. So here we go, we're automatically in our C workspace. I can do ls here. Also, you can just access the file system, so everything is here. I can also do the Git things. So, you know, everything is here, but now with PowerShell and running on Windows. So let's get back to a couple of more slides to finish it all off. So what have we just seen? Well, you've seen a fully featured dev environment. So the whole experience, the Visual Studio Code experience is there, but it's driven by the cloud. So no worrying again about installing the right version, updating your VS Code, none of that. Powered by VS Code, like I said, so it runs in a browser, which is very, very cool, with all the power that comes with it. It has all the themes you need, so you can switch between that. The only thing that I mentioned quickly is like the shortcut keys. So that might be a thing in the browser sometimes, that you suddenly reload your window, which is not something that you want. I think there's being looked into, or maybe it's already solved. At least something is being done with it by the time that this is launched publicly. I'm confident that will happen. So the built-in debugger and runner, as you would expect it to just work. Debugger, inspect all the things, run, step through your code. Very awesome. The automatic Git config and GitHub login. So because this is coming from GitHub, all of that is integrated. All your GitHub credentials or your Git credentials will be imported automatically, and you will have all the rights also for private repositories if that's what you need. That will just be in there, and you will be able to open that pull request, maybe install that GitHub CLI that was recently launched, pull that in with the Docker file or your dot files, and you can do it from here. Personalization through the dot files and dev container, probably some other stuff that I'm forgetting. So the awesome port forwarding that's in there, and much more. So the best is yet to come. You can sign up again at the URL that's up there. Note that it's free in preview. I've touched upon that for a little bit. It's free in preview. Some pricing info is already available. It might change a little bit. I know the pricing for Windows is not on there also yet. I'm not sure if there's going to be a free tier. I think I heard that somewhere, but don't quote me on that. And it will probably be very limited to just show you its power, and it might not be that useful for actual development. But some costs are to be expected for something that runs on the cloud. There's going to be different machine configurations. So Windows is yet to come. It's going to have different specs, multiple CPUs, multiple cores, more RAM, less RAM, probably some GPUs. Some GPU kind of machines will be added as well for your AI applications and that kind of stuff, and probably some other configurations that I can't even think of right now. Support for organizations on GitHub organizations will be coming. There's probably going to be something around billing through organizations and the billing there as well. Desktop app support. So what we've all seen now is very suitable for the web services and the web apps and microservices and console applications and that kind of stuff. C++ they're working on as well. But as you can imagine, you can't see like the actual desktop things running. So I'm very confident that there will be solutions for that, that you can actually see like a GUI thing. So if you're working on that WinForms project, that in some way that will be brought to you, where you can debug it, where you can control it and click the buttons and stuff. So that's something that will come down the road, and probably much more. Like with all the scenarios that I've mentioned, maybe the interviewers, or maybe something completely different. There is so much potential in this solution. There will be much more awesome features in this. So like I said, Ignite is going on right now as I'm recording this. So there's probably going to be a couple of awesome Ignite sessions where people will explain some other stuff in more detail, or maybe better than I even can. So go check that out. The Ignite sessions are probably all being watchable on demand. So go see that. If you want to learn more right now, check out these links. Some of them are used in my presentation. So the demo repository, which is, the project itself is not very impressive, but you can look through the dev container and some other of the personalization stuff and how it's set up. There is already the documentations on GitHub. They are up on the docs.github.com. So go check that out with some questions that you might have. And all the information, again, that I've mentioned. And for signing up with the preview right now, that's the link on the bottom. So go there and go check it out. Thank you so much for your attention. This was my session on Codespaces. Like I mentioned, if there is any questions and anything that you want to follow up with, just say hi, find my contact details, rewind a little bit in this session, you can find them there. And I hope you will enjoy the rest of this conference. I've seen a couple of friends of mine. I mean, we're all friends, but I've seen a couple of friends with some great sessions. So go check them out. And I hope you like this session on Codespaces. I got you interested, excited, ready to do it right now. So go check it out, and I'll be looking forward to hearing from you.